The fear of speaking is rated only second to the fear of snakes and before the fear of dying. The reason most people get anxious when required to speak to a group is that they're afraid of looking foolish or stupid in front of many of their peers and important people. They're afraid that their mind will go blank or that their lack of speaking skills will lower the opinion others have of them. But there are several steps and tricks that you can use to overcome your fear of making a mistake or of looking foolish when you speak in front of a group. The first and most important of these is to be well prepared. One of the best ways you can make sure you don't make foolish mistakes is to be well prepared before you speak to a group. You should know what you're going to talk about, who you're going to speak to, and under what conditions you will speak. I cannot reiterate this enough. Preparedness is the number one anxiety reducer when it comes to public speaking. Leave nothing to chance. A professional in any field does not leave anything to chance before a big game, important performance, or critical presentation. Strategies are laid out, all material is ready, contingency plans are made, and every detail is taken care of. When you're well prepared, chances of failure and goof-ups are greatly reduced. But more importantly, you feel more relaxed and sure of yourself because you have all your bases covered. Another aspect of preparedness is knowing your material. You need to know exactly what you're going to talk about. This doesn't mean you memorize exactly what you plan to say. Rather, it is to have a good outline of facts and information that you can talk about and have rehearsed it enough so that you're not tempted to just read it to us. Remember, this is a class in public speaking, not public reading. If you don't know your material well, in the pressure of the moment, you will probably just end up reading it to us, which is the greatest grade killer in this class. Another aspect of preparedness is knowing the conditions. It's good to check over the conditions under which you will speak. If you can, go up to the podium to check things over and get a feel for things. If you will be using any technology, check it out and make sure that it is functioning properly and that you know how to use it. The next aspect that you need to be aware of with stage fright, and a way to greatly reduce it, is to practice. You should practice your speech many times before you give it. Even if you know your material very well, practice is extremely important. The more you give a talk, the more automatic it becomes. And the more meat it can have, and the more confidence you have in your abilities to give the speech. Think about it. It's like anything else. The more you practice something, the more comfortable you become with it. Like learning to drive. In your first driver's training classes, you probably had a lot of anxiety about being watched and judged and had fear of making mistakes. But the more you practice, the more it becomes second nature, and the fear and anxiety begins to subside until you barely think about it anymore. The same is true with public speaking. Now here's some tricks to employ when practicing your speech. Practice alone. Ways to practice alone are to first simply say the speech out loud. This is good to get the material more ingrained in your memory. Sitting and reading the speech in your head does practically nothing to develop your memory or confidence in speaking. You must create a speaking situation as close to the real thing as possible. So stand and speak out loud. Next, use a mirror. Then say the speech looking into the mirror. This is good to do because you must concentrate more. You also get an idea of how you look when speaking. Finally, if you must refer to your notes, it allows you to practice eye contact with the audience or into the mirror. Next, stand in a corner. An interesting trick is to say your speech while standing in a corner. The sound reflects back to you, and you get a good idea of how you sound when you speak. Another trick is to record yourself. This forces you to avoid pausing to try to remember things. It also allows you to play the speech back to study how you sound, your phrasing, and the content of your material. Lastly, watching yourself will tell you if you're reading too much and whether you're actually drawing your audience into your speech. You'll know if you're boring when you watch yourself. Next, use a friendly audience. Practice before friends or family. This is a very important way to practice because it's getting closer to the real world of speaking to a group. Even an audience of one person is good for this type of practice. All right, a third way to combat stage fright is to have a backup. It is worthwhile to bring along a security blanket or safety net in case something goes wrong in your presentation. The main thing to worry about is forgetting what you're going to say next. This can happen even if you've done extensive practicing of the speech. It's even happened to me. In fact, it happens at some point to every public speaker, so don't think you're alone. A strong backup plan to have is an outline. Referring to your notes is certainly acceptable to an audience as long as you're not reading a speech word for word from a script or from a manuscript. For this class, please know that you are required to have outlines for all of your speeches, but an outline is different from a manuscript. You should never write out your speech word for word because, again, you will end up reading it to your audience, and reading to an audience is not the same as speaking to an audience. The audience resents public readers and ultimately does not help the speaker because the feedback he or she gets from the audience is negative, which in turn raises the speaker's anxiety. Please don't read your speeches. Use a security blanket or an outline. A fourth way to combat stage fright is to reduce your fear of your audience. The more important the audience or the occasion, the greater your fear or anxiety can be. You don't want to look like a fool in front of the bosses at work or your peers or even your friends and relatives. Now, you may know that you are proficient in the skills and material you're going to present, but in high-stakes situations, sometimes that proficiency is overshadowed by the fear. Think of a world-class athlete. He or she may do great in every competition, race, or match that they compete in, but when it comes to becoming an Olympic athlete, the world is watching. The stakes of such an audience raises anxiety, and sometimes mistakes are made during that performance because it's more unpredictable. One way to avoid this fear and unpredictability in performance is to use a positive approach. You have to realize that the audience is usually on your side. They want to hear what you have to say and to see you do well. Think about it. Everyone loves to hear a good talk or good speech or good story. So your success is actually what they want. So before you give your speech, think of them as caring, friendly people who want to hear you speak and speak well. Or think of it like talking to your friends. The positive image should relax you and put you in a good frame of mind. The audience will also read your body language and respond accordingly. A fifth way to combat stage fright is to relax before speaking. When you are introduced to speak, take 3 breaths to settle you down before you get into your chair. Then, when you go up to the podium, take a moment before you begin in order for the audience to get settled and ready to hear you. It's also a way that you are showing that you are now in control. It's easy to do because you have to look at the audience and panic may settle in, but if you have made all the preparations, you can be sure of yourself and deserve to be in control of the situation. It's a good feeling. So that's it. Be prepared. Practice, practice, practice. Have a backup of your outline. Try to relate to your audience and relax right before speaking. Public speaking isn't as bad as dying as people's fears may suggest. You just gotta have plenty of time and practice. Don't be caught dead without it.